Practice pimps and thieves in Italian castle.
It's estimated that tens of thousands of children, some as young as 9, serve as soldiers in dozens of conflicts around the world. While thousands have come out of fighting, thousands more get drawn into new conflicts. This weekend, the Tribeca Film Festival in New York premieres War Child, a documentary which follows the life of Emmanuel Ja, a former child soldier from southern Sudan. Now 28 years old, Jal is a rising hip-hop star. With us to talk about his film, the conflict in Darfur, and how the arts can engage the public is Karim Chrobog. Karim, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Why did you want to make this film?
The film actually had very different roots. We were looking to do a TV series about the globalization of hip-hop and showing how different rappers talk about issues in their respective cultures. And we shortlisted a whole slate of really impressive musicians from China to Cuba, and amongst them was Emmanuel. And as we learned more about his personal life story, which is just absolutely extraordinary, we thought this warrants a film just on himself, and this is what we did. We put this year's aside.
So did you meet him for the first time in Sudan?
No, I met him for the first time in London, where he lives now, and really it was sort of Emmanuel Ja week. He was on, there was an article on the USA Today, he was on NPR, and the more we saw all these stories, we decided to go to London and meet with them. And he was very reluctant initially to do a film, reliving his trauma. He wanted to focus on his music career, but then he realized, you know, this is part of my story, and my music is, at the end, about my experiences.
So when you met him, what was it about him and his life that made him such a compelling character for your film?
Emmanuel, as you see in the film, is an incredibly charismatic character, and he's young, he's funny. He shares his story in a really interesting way. And also that the fact that he's actually Sudanese, it's not the outsider who is going to Sudan and trying to save Sudan and the people. It's actually a Sudanese who has come out of the experience and really wants to change his country to the better. So
he was a child soldier at what age and for how long?
He was a child soldier at the age of 7. We think, based on what we know from talking to him and the research we have done, that he fought between 7 and 11 years old. He is not quite sure about his exact age. Most of the Lost Boys are born on January 1st, 1980. But we probably participated for those 4 years very intensively in the battle.
And has he spoken to you about what did he know about why he was fighting, who he was fighting?
I think with child soldiers in Sudan, it's slightly different than child soldiers, for example, in Sierra Leone, where it's really about natural resources, very much embodied in the film Blood Diamond, which he did a soundtrack for. In Sudan, essentially, it was a liberation fight. The Southerners were fighting the regime in North after the imposition of Sharia law, and wanted their own independent, essentially home country. There are many more issues that go into the conflict, but that's in a nutshell. And so they were very much part of this movement where everybody had to participate. His father was a very senior person in the SPLA, in the Sudan People Liberation Army, and as such, he felt obliged to provide that his son fight in that war. So it's it was part of a national movement where everybody had to participate in this conflict.
And how does your film speak to the wider issues of what's going on in Darfur?
The film, first of all, is very much just a personal story of a young person. It's a story about this individual. South Sudan and Darfur are very they are connected in a way. Darfur is essentially another problem that is part of the larger Sudanese problem. The South conflict was about Christian Southerners and animists versus Muslim Northern Arabs. And Darfur is between Arab Muslims and African Muslims. And the tragedy with Sudan is that you have every ingredient in this country. You have natural resources, you have water, artificial borders, tribalism. So all these issues make up this larger context and this larger war. We make the point in the film that Darfur is really part of this larger problem that warrants attention as such, as part of a problem, not as the problem.
And talk about why Emmanuel Ja picked gospel rap as a way to express his feelings, not just about his home country, but about what's happening there and the rest of the world as well, in terms of its response to the issue of child soldiers.
It's fascinating because once you go to Sudan, you realize he could only be a musician because everybody makes music. You walk down the streets, people are singing. People have their sticks and do the stick dances and music. It's so much part of the national identity. Emmanuel, the Southerners are very religious, so Emmanuel found himself when he got out of Sudan in Nairobi in a church and found sort of a safe haven there. and got into gospel and church music, and from there rap came out of it as sort of a music culture that's also part of Kenya especially.
And how did he escape his life as a child soldier?
It's a fascinating story. He arrived in a place called Wat in southern Sudan, a small village where the SPLA was very strong. It was one of their big strongholds. And he ran into a British lady, an aid worker by the name of Emma McCune. And Emma thought that Emmanuel was cute and adopted him and smuggled him pretty much in her suitcase out of Sudan into Kenya. The interesting story is that Emma McCune was also married to a very senior SPLA guerrilla commander called Riek Machar, who's now the vice president of Sudan, of South Sudan. So that whole story and all these issues come together in this film. And Emmanuel was very lucky. He was the kid that stood out of all these thousands of other kids.
And how does he feel that his life has changed since he's made this film? I mean, how has he been able to use his music and his advocacy work to draw attention to the larger problem of child soldiers?
He feels extremely dedicated to his country, and yes, he is a rapper, but he also is very much on a mission to do something about the situation in Sudan, especially about children. Education is where he feels that he's able to do something very tangible in South Sudan. The film has, the education plays a very large role in that film. And his goal is to build a school in the South Sudan very close to his village. And what he wants to do is provide haven for children. They're not child soldiers anymore, but they're children essentially in an army, so they've been integrated. And
so these are the ones that have been lucky enough to be demobilized, so to speak, from the various conflicts.
Correct. And what we were able to find, especially in refugee camps, we were in a very large one in northern Kenya, South Sudan, called Kakuma. We saw thousands and thousands of children without any adult supervision, just hanging out and essentially leading a very uneventful life, barely any education, and just sitting around, a lot of alcoholism. And that touched him, being able to relive this experience and seeing people that he used to know in these conditions now made him want to do something.
Has he had an opportunity to actually speak with any of the government forces or the various rebel groups that use child soldiers to fight in their wars?
Yes, when we were in Sudan, we met a lot of guerrilla commanders and we interviewed some of them. Riek Machar, he met him briefly, who is essentially his uncle due to the relationship with Emma. And they had a chat, and a lot of the former guerrilla commanders are now very senior parliamentarians or ministers, so they're all part of that national sort of political infrastructure, if you want to say. And he is proud of the SPLA. These are the people who he thinks liberated his home country. On the other hand, how much free thinking can you give a 7-year-old child soldier? But yeah, he had a chance to talk to them and exchange ideas and tell them what he is doing and tell them that he's using his music to bring attention to the conflict.
And in terms of sort of wider sort of reconciliation between Muslims and Christians, how has he been instrumental in trying to do that through his music?
His first international release was an album called Ceasefire, which he did actually with a Muslim northern musician called Abdelgadir Salem. And this was for him the test that, hey, I can make music with my former enemy. And this became his big release. So without that reconciliation on a personal musician to musician level, he probably would never be as famous today, because that really brought attention to him. The fact that he made music with a former...
Right, well, let's bring some attention to you. I mean, what do you hope that your film will accomplish? Is there a message that an overt message that you're trying to put out about your film?
Yes, absolutely. We do want to bring attention to him as a character, but also to the larger problem in Sudan, which essentially is ongoing. There's a peace agreement. It's very fragile. It could go back into conflict at any time. The genocide in Darfur is raging. So we want to bring attention to all these issues, but we also want to bring attention to the fact that there are so many young people in Sudan who really want to contribute to the improvement of the country. And Emmanuel is a primary example. We met so many extremely intelligent children in the refugee camps who all would be just brilliant leaders and who are so dedicated. We world premiered in Berlin. We're going to Tribeca next, and hope to get a wider release for the film very soon.
Well, how do you think that film and I guess the arts in general can make an impact on society at large in terms of bringing issues like child soldiers and the conflict in Sudan and in Darfur much more to the fore, especially when you think that, with a lot of countries, people do tend to kind of get fatigued with all of the problems and all of the conflicts that are going on around the world.
I think you hit a very key point, which is essentially conflict fatigue. I mean, you turn on the television, you have a problem in any part of the world. What is so inspiring about this story, that it's actually a very hopeful story. You know, he's funny. There's so many moments of humor in the film, and he's a rapper. I mean, he is what people listen to. So allowing us to get into very complicated subject matter through the eyes of a musician, particularly a rapper, is of course a golden opportunity.
And as a filmmaker, are there any examples that you can give us of where you think film or the other arts have actually been great, I suppose, in terms of getting their message across about certain subject matters that do kind of cause the shutters to kind of go down over people's eyes? Is there something that you felt particularly inspired by?
Sure. I think to go back to your original question, yes, there are so many documentaries particularly who bring attention to these issues, and they are as popular as never before. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of documentaries being made every year now. And they present an opportunity to bring attention to these issues. And Sudan is, I think, the primary example of a conflict that really has become a wider public issue because of music and because of film and because of celebrity activism. And George Clooney had his famous movie Sands of Sorrows, which just played somewhere on HBO. And all these films just help bring out sort of a wider attention. And
in terms of Emmanuel, has he had any kind of response from politicians? I know that he does a lot of advocacy work. What kind of reaction does he get from world leaders, especially in the West, who can make a difference in terms of what's going on in Darfur?
He is very popular with politicians because, again, he's a Sudanese and he's a musician. So.
But the fame hasn't gone to his head, has it?
Not yet. I hope it won't stay. We're going to try to make sure that it doesn't happen. But he's very popular. He does brilliantly well with politicians, and he's able to sort of charm them, entertain them, talk to them, and they're always just amazed by how good he is at what he does. So he always finds an open ear wherever he goes. He does a lot with the United Nations. He's a spokesman for various international organizations. He tours and meets with a lot of young people. So he finds open arms wherever he goes, and as you see in the film, he's just incredibly good at it. And
are there any particular politicians that you feature in the film that he has met who have then gone on to perhaps say something about the conflict in Sudan or in Darfur or in other parts of Africa?
It's interesting, and it was part of the formation of the film. We had many more politicians in the film, in past cuts of the film. What we decided actually is to take that away and really focus on him personally. And we do meet, and the politicians we do meet are the ones in Sudan. He meets with Mrs. Rebecca Garang, who was married to John Garang, a former rebel leader. And there are very entertaining episodes where he gets back together with these folks and meets them. We figured that's what makes our film unique, is not to have the typical talking heads in the film, of which we have some you need to, but that everybody he meets is somebody you wouldn't expect.
All right, Karim, well, good luck with the film, and nice to talk to you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Janandi walla kamen janandi torra meren dirlangi nangi